Hi, Bryant here. Welcome to the inaugural episode of 100 Apps in 100 Hours, where I will take some of your favorite apps and try to recreate them in under 1 hour or die trying. Hopefully, not dying, but you get the idea. And first on our list today is Expensify. So we're going to build an Expensify clone. Expensify is expense management. And let's actually, I'm not really sure I like the word clone here. Let's call this a tribute, like the Tenacious D song. This is just a tribute because it would be very difficult to build all the functionality of Expensify in 1 hour. Obviously, they built an entire business and they probably have thousands of developers, but let's get as close as we can. So when I think about Expensify, let's just go to their website. I think of the first thing I think of is scanning the receipt, taking a picture of it, and it does the automagic stuff where it automatically fills out expense reports for me, which, to be honest, is kind of a pain in the rear anyway. So that is one thing that we're going to be concerned with. Let's just map this out. Automagic receipt management. We're going to have expense reports. So we want to roll up all of those expenses, and some of those are going to be billable, and all those may be reimbursable. So we need to track for that. What else? We want to be able to approve expense reports. Yeah, seems like a good list for getting started. All right, so I'm going to pull up my handy tool of choice, Directus. So Directus, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a back-end toolkit that allows you to build pretty much anything or everything and get instant APIs on top of any SQL database. That's the pitch. I swear that's it. Let's actually run the clock, and I'm late on the clock here, but we'll start the clock. 60 minutes on the timer. Let's go. We're going to hop into Directus, and I am in my data model settings right now. And I'll zoom way in so you guys can actually see this all right. The first thing we're going to do is let's spec out our expenses. So let's just dive into our data model. We're going to have expenses as one of our collections. So Directus is going to create this table for us. And when we go to the optional system fields, we'll probably have a status. Let's go with a sort for the order on the expense report. And we'll just select all these system fields because they have some presets that are useful to us. All right, so we've got expenses, and I'm just going to use a Expensify tribute. We'll create a folder here for this. We'll even give it like a nice green color. Boom. We're going to organize all that inside our Expensify tribute. Okay, so the next thing, we are going to have an expense report, right? We've got to roll up all those expenses somewhere. This is where we'll do it. Okay, great. Okay, what else are we going to need? Let's just get started with this functionality. All right, so we go back to Expensify, and let's try to figure out exactly what their data model looks like. My favorite way of doing that, short of interacting with the app, is searching for their API. So we'll just go to the Expensify API. We'll go to their API reference. We just zoom way in on this. Expensify integration server, all you need to integrate. All right, so request formats, we see what's going on here. Let's look for read and get, policy lists, maybe create. Okay, I see here's the expense creator. All right, so, okay, it looks like here's a definition of the expense object. So reading through this, we've got a merchant, we've got the date of the expense, we've got the amount, in cents, we've got the currency. That's an integer. That's probably on purpose. 3-letter code of the expense, external ID. There's a category. There's a tag. Is it billable? Is it reimbursable? Comments, reports, IDs, tax. Okay. Straightforward enough. Let's dive in. We'll go to our expenses, and first let's add our merchant. So we'll just create a new field inside our data model for Directus. This is just going to be a string type, and clear enough, we are going to require a value. We've got to have somebody that we got this receipt from. Let's change that to half width. And now let's move on to the amount. So let's do an input field. Now I could do this as an integer in cents. What I am going to do instead is just use a decimal for this. So we'll do a decimal. I could change the scale to 2 points, and it looks good. All right, so now we've got the amount for the expense. We need to add a date for the expense. Expense date, let's just call that. So we'll choose the date time here, and I'm going to pick the timestamp as the type, just because that will respect any time zones. I'm in the US. I use the 24-hour format, or let's not use the 24-hour format since I'm in the US. No need to include the seconds. That's great. So we've got our merchant, we've got the amount, we've got the expense date. Let's just do the name of the expense. Is that inside Expensify? Let's take a look. Created amount, optional tag. Yeah, I'm just going to give a name for the expense. Maybe we have some notes for that. Great. We'll add the text area field for that. We don't need any formatting. Great. Merchant amount. Let's do a little cleanup on this. Directus makes it so easy to build apps that look great for your users. All right. What else do we have? An expense comment. Got that. So then we have things like, is this billable? Is this reimbursable? So these are going to be toggles inside Directus. That's the name of the interface, as we call it. Let's do is billable. I like to prefix those with is. Just keeps things organized. Default value will be false. And looks good. Maybe we want to embellish this a little bit. So if you go into the advanced mode inside Directus, we can add notes for our users. Is this expense? Can we invoice this to a client? Great. All right. Enabled. Let's just call it billable for the label. That seems a little better. The display as where it will show up in some of the different layouts inside Directus when you're looking at a list of records. Yeah, I don't see any need to change this. Great. All right, we'll shrink that to half width. And I'm just going to duplicate this one. And you can see how easy it is to build this out. Is reimbursable. Directus makes a lot of this quick and painless. So we're going to keep this on the expense collection. Is reimbursable. Yes, this is a reimbursable expense. We've got the user that created this, but I wonder if there's a use case where I have to add expenses that somebody else submitted because they didn't do their job. So let's just add a owner, an expender. What is the proper term for that? Buyer? Hey, let's just call it an owner. Expense owner makes sense to me. That's what we'll call it for now. That is going to be our Directus users collection. So that'll be the users of our app. Great. That's what we'll call it. That's the hardest thing in development, is actually naming things. Okay, so this looks pretty good. This is a good start. What else are we missing for this? We've got a category. We've got the tags. Name of the tags. Yeah, we could do that. Let's build in a little more functionality. So we'll do tags. Maybe I want to do tags and categories as a separate collection, and actually build those into the relationships. So category, to me, there's only one single category that an expense can be in. Tags obviously could be many. So here we are going to use a many to one. So this one expense belongs to a single category. That's what we're going to call it. Let's call it expense category. Great. And for our related collection, let's also do expense categories as the name of that. Now, I could click save and Directus will do some magic for me, or I can open up advanced mode and go in and actually look at the details of this relationship. So if we look, we can see we've got this collection, we've got an expense category field, and Directus is telling me that, hey, we're going to create a new collection called expense categories, and we're going to use the ID field of that to populate. All right. The mini to one, I could control the display template, but for now I don't have any other fields because that collection is yet to be created. But we'll go in and go ahead and create this field here. And if I were to go back to my data model as well, we'll see that Directus created that collection for us. So now we've got our expense category. Let's go in and do tags as well. So tags are going to be a many to many relationship inside Directus. One tag could be applied to many different expenses, and many expenses could have many different tags. Great. You didn't know we were getting into data model expertise today, but let's name this thing. What are we going to call it? We're just going to call it tags. Right. We're going to create a related collection called expense tags. And what else do we need to do? Show a link to the item so we can edit that tag as needed. Great. Save. All right, so now we've got the basis of our expenses. Let's go in and flesh out these other ones that we just created. For expense categories, we're probably going to have a name for that expense category, and maybe we've got like an account number for our profit and loss, account name. Cool. All right, and then for our tags, let's go in and add the name. And maybe we want to create a color for our tags. So I'm just going to search for the color field here inside Directus. We'll give each tag a color. I could go through and preset these. If you leave this blank, Directus will actually create, give you a few of those presets that look nice anyway. All right, so always got to do my proper formatting. This is kind of a speed run, but one of the other things that I am a little OCD about, honestly, is cleaning things up and having a nice row of, or nice columns of icons inside the app. So you can see a website project I've got working on here, but for now, let's just roll with this. So we've got our tags, we've got our categories. The last thing that we need to do, if we open up one of our expense reports, which we have no data in that, we need to figure that one out. But we need a link back to our expense reports. So let's go into the data model. We'll go to expense reports. And this is really nice. We just recently added this search feature inside the data model, which is great, especially when you have hundreds of collections. So we'll go into our expense report. We're going to have a name. Do we even need a name? Yeah, we'll give it a name of the expense report. This could be a title. Bryant's second quarter expenses, blah, 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 etc. All right. Then we have a owner, or could be like submitted by. That's probably better, but we stuck with owner on the other one, so we'll just roll with that. For our related collection, we're going to do Directus users. And you could pick these from a drop down over here on the right just by clicking those, but if you'll notice, when I hit on one of the actual collections inside Directus, this turns purple just to let me know I'm doing the right thing here. So we've got the owner of this expense report. Yeah, I don't like that terminology, but I don't want to backtrack at this point. Date created. All right. What else do we have? Then we're going to need the actual expenses on this. So in this case, we've got a one-to-many relationship. So one expense report has many expenses. We're going to call the key for this expenses. That's going to be stored as a column in the database as. And then we're going to pick our expenses as the related collection. And for the foreign key, we don't have one that exists already, but Directus will create one for us, which is nice. We're just going to call it expense report because there is a single report it is linked to. And then I could go in and use let's change this to a table view. We could see the merchant. Maybe we want to add the expense date, the amount, and maybe the category. So here, when it's a related collection, I can just pick up the related fields as well. Great. Enable searching and filtering. Hit save. And it's probably good enough for now, right? Let's dive in and actually start creating some expense reports. So I've got a new expense report. Bryant's fourth quarter. It's not even the fourth quarter. Third quarter. Let's just call it September expenses. Expenses. Great. All right, so we go in. I'm going to be the owner of this. I am not a user at this point, so I'll just use Mr. Hop Along. And now we can go in and add some of our expenses. All right, so we've got Starbucks. The expense date is going to be this morning at 7:30. I'm in West Virginia of all places, so we don't have a ton of coffee options here. I know some people are going to be mad that we've got Starbucks in here. That was expensive, so let's say $21.02 as the amount. Coffee needed that real bad. All right, is this billable? Probably not. Is this reimbursable? We could have this where I could select this, but one of the other things you could do inside Directus is preset this to a default setting for like the current user, for example. So for now, I'll just we'll pick hops along. We don't have any expense categories. I want to say this would probably fall under meals and entertainment, or just meals. Know how you want to divide those out. I hate doing bookkeeping, so account number, I want to say it's like the 300 or 400s. Meals, entertainment. Great. Cool. Keeping track of all that. Tags. What are we going to tag this as? Coffee would be the name of it. I don't really like any of these. Maybe we can pick, yeah, let's just go with red for coffee. That's great. Cool. All right, so we've got our information here. We've added our first expense. Pretty great. Cool. We've got our expense report. The next thing, maybe we want to fire off this expense report to somebody on our team. How are we doing on time? We're at 43 minutes, so that took about 20 minutes to flesh out this. How can we send this expense report to a team member for approval? Well, first of all, let's do an expense report. Let's add an approved by. So we want to track who this was approved by. That's going to be a Directus users. So it's going to be one of our users. Great. And then maybe an approval date, right? So we'll do a date timestamp, date approved. Great. No 24-hour format. So now we got two fields to track our approvals. Let's go in and use the flows inside Directus to send this report off, or send a link to somebody to this report. So send expense report for approval. Great. And then we can even customize this. Let's do send. Yeah, there we go. Looks great. Scheduled send. We'll make this orange just so it stands out. All right, so now I've got a list of different triggers. I want to actually trigger this one manually. So Directus gives us the option within a specific collection on the layout page or the detail page to send this off. So we will go in and look for expense reports. Okay, there's my expense report. Great. And then I could choose whether this is asynchronous. So, do I want to do this in the background? What are the locations where I can trigger this? So we want to do on the collections and items pages. That's fine. We'll do both of those. If you are on the collection page, this will require a selection. Okay, we do need you to pick this to actually send this off. And then next, I'm going to do this require confirmation, because I get the ability to add different fields to the system, to prompt for those fields when I send it. So I am going to add a new field for approver. So who do we need to send this? Approver. Who needs to approve this report? Great. Now, the type I'm going to pick here is going to be JSON, because we have a special little interface called the collection item dropdown, where I can pick a value from this and store it in JSON. So here again, we're going to do Directus users, and I'm going to pick the user that I want to approve this report. And I could go in and, as far as customizing the display template as well. Let's do the avatar, first name, last name. Great. And then maybe we even want to add a note. Note. Call this note to approver. And that'll be just a simple string. No big deal. Great. Got the field width. Let's make it full width. Actually, let's do a text area for that. Just a quick note. Great. Okay. So now that we've got that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this, and I just want to get a look at what it's going to look like when I'm on my expense report. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see send expense report for approval. I can select items, or if I'm inside this expense report, I can click expense report, and then I get this confirmation dialog of who needs to approve this. Matt. My note to Matt is going to be, hey, I need more budget for these videos. Great. Run flow on current item. And let's just see what that came up with. So inside my flows, I can go in and check my logs, and I could see what was actually sent down the pipe. So here's the trigger. Here's the body of the payload, and this is actually what we received. This is what we will use to fire off that message. All right, so this looks great. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this information. This is what I need. I'm going to open up VS Code. let's start with a new window here. Where are you? New window, new file. All right, so this is our trigger data. Great, perfect. Okay, so now let's build the steps of our flow. We want to send this expense report for approval, but we need an email to send it to, and we do not have that data here. So we need to actually get that data. So that's going to be our next step. Get approver email is what we'll call it. And we will click read items from the database. The permissions from the trigger should be fine. I can also change this to full access if this is going to be triggered from somewhere other than inside the app. And for the collection, we are going to use the Directus users, but you can see this is not coming up in the search because it's a system collection. So I'm just going to go in and hit edit raw value, and we will do Directus underscore users. That's our collection. Now for the IDs, we are going to use our little squirrely bracket mustache syntax, and we are going to pick up the ID from this approver key that we selected. All right, so how do I do split screen here? Fancy, fancy. All right, so this is going to be located at, so we'll use our brackets, mustache. We're going to do $trigger. Trigger is the only one that has this special syntax. All the other keys of your operations get appended under the key that you set here without the $. That's one of the big things that I see a lot of people get tripped up on. And it's going to be .body.approver.key. Great. That's going to be our ID. Do we need a query for this? I don't think so because we're picking up the key there. Let's hit save. And then next, we want to, I'm just going to save this. Let's run that one more time. So we'll go back to our expense report. I'll pick Matt here. Hey, dude. We'll go back to our flow. And this is a good way of building flow so I can actually see the details of what we've got going on. Now I can see an issue right away for this demo anyway. This is going to send to matt@example.com, which is not a real email address. So I'm just going to quickly change this to one of my own emails just for demonstration purposes and to prove that we can actually build this app this quickly. All right, we'll go back to our flows. Now let's actually send that email. And again, when working with flows, it's helpful to have like a code editor open. But this case is fairly straightforward. We are going to send an email. We'll choose the send email operation. And for the addresses, we're going to use that squirrely mustache syntax again. This is going to be get, this is where my memory struggles. This is called get approver email. So the 2 is going to be get underscore approver email, and that's going to be the user object. So we're just going to do email. I have to hit enter here to save this. We could also add additional emails if I wanted to, CC myself. Let's call this expense report. And the type here could be WYSIWYG. You can even choose a template if you are using our custom extensions, but let's go in and do this as a WYSIWYG will be fine. And we're going to do the trigger. So we just want to pick up the content from our note, which is going to be body.note. Should be. Great. All right, so this should populate that message into our WYSIWYG editor when we send this email out. Fingers crossed, we're going to save this. Let's test it out and see. How are we doing on time? All right, so we got about 32 minutes left, maybe a little less than that because I was failing on throwing together I was failing to do the countdown correctly. But let's give this a shot. We'll go in, we'll send the expense report for approval. We're going to send it to Rabat Miner. Man, I need some more lattes. All right, so we fire that off. Let's go back in and check our logs just to make sure. Okay, it looks like the email went out. I'm just going to open up my email inbox, and voila, it sent this out. That's great. That's all good. But where's the actual expense report? There's no link. So let's go back in. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to capture the URL for this from my Directus admin. Great. And then we're going to go into our flow. We'll go back to that email. And we just want to give Matt like a button or a link or something here. So we're going to do view and approve report. We'll enter in this email, and we're going to use our bracket mustache syntax, and we'll do the trigger.body.keys 0. So the first item of the keys array is what we want to include. Cool. Great. Gravy. Save. Save. All right, so now let's go back in. We'll send this expense report one last time. One more time with a link. Hopefully. Fingers crossed, right? All right, so now we wait. And boom, we have a link. We click on the link. It logs us in. And Matt should be logging in to update the status on this. So we may want to go in and update the statuses for these. Let's do our expense reports. Let's change the status. Draft. We'll do submitted for one. Submitted. So submitted for approval, approved, maybe not approved as one. Rejected. Let's call it rejected. That'll be fun. That's a little harsh for an expense report. Like, hey, your expense report was rejected. But yeah, no worries. Oh, I goofed that up, didn't I? Should have saved before I started slamming away on the keyboard. Submitted. All right, we'll just clean this up. Draft. Okay. Approved. Rejected. All right, let's just show the raw value for now, or maybe a formatted value. That's fine. We'll do like a border, make it fancy looking. Allow other values, no. Allow no selection, no. For the interface, though, maybe it could be interesting if we do radio buttons. Great. All right. Cool. So now we go in. Matt can approve this expense report and save it. But as you can see, I'm logged in as myself. I could potentially approve this expense report myself, which is not cool. So we could use the roles and permissions inside Directus for that, where I could go in and say a given role, like if we just had one called team member, for example, I could go in And for our expense reports, I could go in and give custom permissions for this so that I cannot edit a certain field like the status. So this would prevent that user from actually, I'm sorry, I did that backwards. I would check all the other fields, like that user can update everything else about this expense report, except the status or any other items that I needed. And likewise, one of the other things that I could do here is when I create a report, if we use the custom permissions for this, you could go in and define the presets where you can say, hey, the current user is the default for this particular field. Sounds great. All right. That is basic functionality of this. We've got the ability to add expenses, submit expense reports. You might want to try and tag into some other system to pay out these expenses, but for now I could stroke a check for those, I guess. But that leads us back to boom, 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 the Automagic receipt management. So this part is a bit scary to me. I don't know how we're going to do this in 26 minutes. Actually, I'm lying to you. I do know what we're going to try because I've already cheated a little bit. Let's get that clock out of the way. I'm going to make this full screen again. I have found this other service called Mindy, not sure what it's called. But it takes the receipts, OCR, optical character recognition magic on them, and apparently spits back out some data. Now, for the sake of time, all I've done is logged into this app and set up an account. I haven't done anything else with it, so you're almost as fresh as I am at this point. I did see just a quick little tooltip that told me this is the API that I want. So let's take a look at how we could do this. Anytime I upload an expense that has an image attached to it, and Directus is mobile friendly, so I could potentially log into this from my phone and update these expenses as well, just to prove it to you there. Anytime I update one of those expenses, it has an image attached to it. We want to send this off to this service and hopefully I'd not have to deal with actually entering in all the separate fields. Great. So first thing we need to do is we got our expenses. Let me close this one. We need to add an image field to upload the expense. So we'll go into our expenses. Let's add a image, receipt image or receipt file, or we could just call it file. No need to get fancy with it. All right. So now we've got the ability to upload a file. Let's start building a flow and then we'll incorporate this other service. So we've got Automagic receipt OCR. Cool. All right, so we'll do that on event hook. Let's do a action non-blocking, so we don't want to block the thread. Anytime a new item is created inside expenses, and we'll start there, right? All right, so let's go into, let's actually go back to our expenses. Let's just call this a new expense. Actually, we're not going to do any of that. All I want to do here, and maybe we move this file up to the start, actually. Let's move our file way up here. All right, so the ideal scenario here is all I have to do, create a new expense, upload an image of that, and then this service and Directus would do the rest for me. So let's just Google receipt images. Let's get a receipt image. See if we can find one that's pretty gnarly as well. What's this guy? Tesco Metro. Yeah, this one looks pretty beat up. This will be a good test, right? Save this image. Where did I go? Too many different tabs going on. So here's our Tesco shopping receipt. We hit save. Merchant value can't be null. That was a problem of mine. Maybe I should go in and remove that. But you could set that up where it wasn't required. But now if we take a look at our flow, that should have triggered our flow. We've got a payload. We can see here's the file that we're going to potentially pick up. Great. One of the other things that I want to make sure, because we're going to have to send this file to that service, is I'm going to check our system collection and make sure that Directus files has public read permissions. And I could drill down to where, only files within a certain folder are available. If I wanted to get very specific for this, let's just leave it as it is. Again, this is an Expensify tribute, not a clone. Great. All right, so now we've got our data coming from our new expense. We are going to want to pass that to the MindD API. So let's see the API here. All right, load some stuff up for me. All right, if I was smart, I would have gone in here and cheated a little bit more than what I'm doing now. All right, so I don't have an API key. How do I create an API key? API keys. All right, we'll create an API key. We're going to call this Directus. Great. Copy that API key. Don't you guys steal my API key. So we'll go back to the API, go back to our documentation. Here's everything we're going to need. Now is a good time to do the split screen stuff with Arc. Great browser, still struggling, like 6 months on to figure this thing out. All right, give myself a little more room. So we got the post request. We are going to use the send to, let's just call it OCR receipt. We are going to use the webhook request URL. We're going to do a post request as it says. Here is our URL that we're going to pick up. Hopefully we can just copy that. Savvy. Of course, it takes that post request. This looks okay. We got our headers. We're going to add authorization. It's going to be a bearer token. Raycast, great app as well, by the way. We'll paste in our API key. And then the content type. Content type. Multi-part form data. Okay. Let's look for like a curl example. Document is path to your file. Okay, so it looks like we've got a document key. And I'm going to pick up. Oh, the other downside of working locally. That might be the death of this particular project, right? This is on my local computer. I've got 18 minutes. It's not going to be able to access that image. Let's do some more cheating, right? We'll go back to our receipt images. I got the image address Don't be mad at me for cheating on this. All right, let's take a look at that. We've got a document. Here's the public URL of an image. Document can either be a file object URL or base64. That should be savvy. Next time I'll have to do this on a standard cloud instance, not one of my local copies. All right, so we've got this. We're going to take the webhook request. Let's see if they give us like a response, what that response looks like. Date, confidence, document type, line items, locale, supplier address. I'll tell you what, let's just send this off and see what we come back with. All right, so we're just going to pretend, and actually this is going to be correct because it's the same receipt, but just a little cheating involved. We'll add a merchant name for this. We've sent this off to our Automagic receipt. It says unauthorized, use token. What did I forget? Oh, token. Let's see. I've forgotten something. API reference authorization token. It's not bearer token, it's just token. Great. Let's go back and try her again. Keep editing. Don't forget to save your changes, kids. All right. We'll create a new expense. Use the same receipt we've already uploaded so we don't duplicate it. And I really should remove that requirement. Go to our flows. See what we got. Bad request. Missing boundary in multi-part form data. All right. How are we going to structure this, right? Missing boundary in multi-part form data. Do we actually need the content type? Can we try that? See if we can get away with it. Otherwise, I think I'm going to have to reformat everything. All right, so we go to our flows. Let's take a look. Logs. Hey, there we go. All right, so we've got our prediction. And we probably don't have to use form data because we're not passing an actual document. Cool. So we've got our document. This is a giant string or a giant JSON object. Tons of stuff. Taxes, the value, supplier phone number, prediction, document type, expense receipt. Here's our line items. We just need our amount, right? And dates. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Let's open up VS Code. Do this, and we'll look for date. Okay, so there we go. We've got our date. It'd be great if there was a way to copy that path, right? Let's close. Let's separate these. Do this. Get a little side-by-side action going with VS Code. All right, so now we need to update this item. How are we doing on time? We've got 13 minutes. Let's get it done. So now we're going to update our expense with the data coming from this API. And I may want to do something like this where we say format data. Or I could just directly update that data. Anyway, so we'll go into update data. Let's say update expense. We are going to use the permissions from the trigger. This is going to be an expense. The IDs are going to be coming from trigger.body .keys.0, I believe. We'll take a guess. And the payload that we want, we got the merchant. We want to pass that. I want the expense date, I believe. The amount of the expense. And I think that would be a win. So let's look for the merchant, supplier, supplier address, supplier name. All right, let's start with the date, right? So how do we get a hold of this guy? We've got our data. All right, let's just save this. That is our OCR receipt. That's our key. And of course, because this was an invalid payload, it did not save. All right, so our date, expense date, is going to be blah, blah, blah. We've got OCR receipt dot data dot document dot inference. I love that these guys are sending all this. Dot pages dot prediction. Debugging this is gonna be a nightmare, huh? Dot date dot value. But that is deeply nested if I've ever seen it. Great. All right, so next we've got the merchant. Let's try it. That is going to be something probably similar. And I already see a typo. Prediction. Okay, so we'll just copy paste that. All right, and that's going to be called what? The supplier name, value, prediction, supplier underscore name dot value. Okay, great. And then last but not least should be the amount. And we are closing in on 10 minutes on the clock. Hopefully this thing works out. Would hate to start off on a loss. All right, so the amount, let's look for the amount. Total amount is what we're looking for. 0.99 confidence, that's great. That's what we're looking for. Got a lot of confidence in this. We've got the total underscore amount dot value. All right, so there we go. We've got our JSON. I'm just going to copy it just to verify. Update. Let's try it one more time. Let's delete these failed attempts. All right, Tesco shopping receipt. We're going to have to enter that in. Hit save. And automagic receipt OCR. I don't have permission to access this because I don't have the proper key. So I didn't pass the key. I got the payload wrong as well. What did we get wrong here? Dot data. OCR receipt dot data. Dot document. Maybe it's just document. Maybe we can omit data. OCR receipt. And I also need to fix the keys because I didn't get those correct either. So it's actually just key. That's what's coming from the trigger, the expense. So body trigger dot body dot key. All right, fingers crossed. We'll run this again. This works this time. Let's hope so. Do our nice little T here. Boom, boom, boom. We don't have permission to access this. Still says undefined. So we're getting this back from the API. That's great. Trigger.body.key. The key should be correct though. Payload. Trigger.payload. Oh, no, this is an event hook. I'm sorry, so I've got it wrong. Should just be trigger.key. No body. Just fine. Trigger.key. That part's good. We are not good here though. So let's do this. Let's disconnect this. Let's add a step. Maybe just log this to the console. Log. And we are going to do get OCR receipt is what we're calling it. We're just going to console log OCR receipt. Log OCR receipt. See what we're getting past. All right, we'll drag that down here for now. We are running out of time. I feel like this is fun playing beat the clock. We'll hit save this. Let's go take a look. What do we got for him, Johnny? Log to the console message.data. Okay, so do we have to include message.data? Worth a shot. Let's see. With 5 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock, wasting precious time. So we got message.data. Message.data.document. I'll just copy, paste. All right. It's either going to be a big finish or a sad ending. Not sure. We'll try it out and see. All right, so we've got that same image. We're running it one more time. Flows, do us nicely. Error update. Expenses set where invalid input syntax for type numeric. Still not getting the correct stuff coming from the app here. What in the world is going on? All right, let's bring in the big guns here. What am I doing wrong? Logging to the console. All right, let's try picking up the data that we want. Let's go with run script. Where are you? Format, data. All right, so we're going to get the data from receipt equals OCR data.ocr receipt. Okay. And let's just return receipt for now. Let's string this together. See if I could just get something going here. Format data. What's going on now? Oh, it's going to be a sprint to the finish. Log to the console. I can't even get my... so we'll drag that. Let's log it to the console. Let's see what comes out of this. Expense, save, format data. flows, automagic. All right, so we got the run script, status. Okay, so we got data. We want to pick up the data.document, right? I swear that's right. Data.ocr doc equals receipt dot data dot document. Let's return the doc. We'll just keep drilling down. We got 2 minutes left. Let's see how this is going to play out. Save. Save it. Flows. If I was smart, I would have had multiple options. Okay, so we got this. Let's get down to our inference. Oh, I see what was wrong now. Duh. Pages is an array. That's where we were going wrong the entire time. Pages 0. Don't you love that? Message. It's not message. The message is coming from that console log. All right. So with 1 minute and 21 seconds on the clock, let's save this and just see what comes up as the clock is ticking down. Now, if I hit save and stay, it should be doing that for me, but it did not. Or did it? Did it actually do it? Expenses, there it is. Boom, with 49 seconds on the clock remaining, we have populated the receipt information from a third-party API, therefore fulfilling our requirements for this. That is a wrap on the first edition of 100 apps in 100 hours. I feel like we need like a little Tiger Woods, just, finish up strong. So if you enjoyed this series, or this episode of this series, stay tuned. We've got more coming like this. Would love for you to hop into our Directus Discord community and send us your feedback on what apps you would like to see us build next with our set of tools that we have here at Directus.